so they're going to cue us on. Let's go.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. We want to welcome you all to Homestead, Miami Speedway, and Ford Championship Weekend. Glad to have you here joining us. NASCAR Chairman and Chief Executive Officer Brian France will give his State of the Sport press conference. Before we do start, I want to acknowledge Holly Kane. It's good to have you here, Holly. I think no matter how out of hand your colleagues get in the next 30 minutes, this is already a highlight. So it's good to have you here, Holly. Again, welcome, Brian France. Thanks for taking the time. Brian, just to kick this off, gathered for championship weekend. It's been about a year since the decision was made to move forward with a new format. Start us off with your assessment of the season, and particularly the chase for the championship.
Well, I think it's accomplished. Naturally, you would expect me to think that it accomplished all of our goals, probably exceeded them in the balance between winning and consistency. We always know in auto racing there needs to be both, but we felt strongly that, but emphasizing winning on the track, we might not have had that balanced correctly. We do now. We think that that's in a really good place. And I think depending on what happens on Sunday, has a chance to be one of the most successful seasons in NASCAR history. I don't think there's any doubt about the level of competition that is up, which has our fans excited, and it has the interest level of the sport as a result of that higher. And that's precisely what we want to achieve. Now, I do think it's important to say that even though the format is relatively simple, what we're all finding out is the strategies that are associated with competing in this new format are different, and they're unknown and untested. And I think that's going to take a while for even the most hardcore fans to fully, get accustomed to how the flow of a season goes and the last 10 events, et cetera, et cetera. When are the transfer races? Why are they so important? How do you get in? I mean, Phoenix was a great example of that, where one person in Harvick won the race, but another in Ryan Newman got there in a more of a consistent model, but got there nonetheless. And how that all plays out, that's going to take some time just to unfold for all of us. But the net of it is, we're interested in raising the interest level by raising the competition level. When we do that, obviously it's up to us and our partners of how to present that, but that's what our fans and ourselves love most.
Do you anticipate any changes to the format for 2015?
I would say, very modest to zero. We'll reserve the right that there's a modest thing that we might make an adjustment on, but like I said, it's exceeded what I had hoped for, and it's done precisely what we thought we wanted to do, which was recalibrate competition, or winning rather, and still have a strong place for consistency and all the rest, but recalibrate that balance. And we're It's only year one, but clearly we're on our way.
So as you look at 15 with significant schedule changes, the rules package change, and what you've learned out of this year's chase, forecast 2015 if you can.
Well, I think, number one, I like the schedule better, especially in the early events. I think the teams, and they've said so much, will look at some new strategies as they try to figure out, advancing, surviving, and ultimately winning this Sprint Cup championship. And I think they're the best guys in the world, not only the drivers but the teams and strategists, and they're now figuring out, as we know they would, after getting a year to look at it. I suspect you'll see some changes in how some of the teams approach coming in and out of transfer events, or really understanding why winning is important early. You saw that with some of the teams that got a head start on that, were able to take some pressure off. So we're excited about it. This is a format that is not a one-time phenomenon. This is a format that, when we thought about it carefully, we realized this is something you can build on. This is the future for Sprint Cup racing.
Good. We're going to go ahead and open it up to questions. We have wireless mics with Laura and Edward. Ask you to please state your name and affiliation, and we'll go for as long as there are questions. We'll start right here with Tom Jensen from Fox, and we'll go to Lee Spencer.
Hi, Brian. Tom Jensen from FoxSports.com. You were the architect of the original chase in 2004, and that was met with a certain amount of resistance, just as the new format is now. Can you compare how teams, how fans have accepted this to what it was like the first time around?
Well, I think it's been much much easier, and I think some of that is that we have a different communication plan with all of our drivers and our teams today, and so they're able to understand on the ground floor of any big decision that we might make that probably was different back in 2004. It wasn't like we were not talking to them, but I think so. Whatever is important, we can kind of get there together a little bit smarter. And then I think they all, for the most part, have accepted the old chase and really like the attributes of this, of the new one. So a combination of those two puts us in a good place.
Go to Lee, and then over here to Mark Yarrow.
Lee Spencer, Motorsport.com. There's been a lot of question as to whether or not we will indeed see the testing eliminated for 2015. Have you given second thought to that?
No, we like, reducing the cost structure. We listened to the teams in our various team owner meetings through the last couple of years, and I think we have enough in place to enforce the testing policy for 2015. We'll see how it goes.
Go to Mark, and then over to Jim Utter, Bob Pockross, and Jennifer Fryer.
Mark Garrell, PRN. Brian, there has been a renewed emphasis on winning all season, and I think most people agree that that's been a good thing. Is there any negative, however, to have Ryan Newman, having gotten this far, potentially win a championship without a win? You talked about there's a good balance now between winning and, of course, consistency, but will it be tough to explain to the fans, or what do you think their reaction is going to be if, by chance, he wins the championship without winning a race?
Well, we would like that. I mean, the best team will win on Sunday. What I mean, though, is any format that we've ever had always has the possibility that somebody might win the championship without winning an event. Short of us, which we're not going to do, make it a hard prerequisite that you have to win a race to qualify. We don't think that takes it out of balance, frankly. And so I think it's great. I mean, you have three drivers who competed, in one. You got one that didn't. I do think whoever comes out as champion on Sunday probably needs to think about winning the race. I'd be surprised if one of those 4 drivers can get out of here with a championship. And what we've seen, if you go through past years, of how those teams will be elevating their game against everybody else, no matter what people say. You go back to Tony Stewart a few years ago. You go back to Jimmy Johnson when he needed to do what he needed to do, or anybody else. Those will be the teams, and they were last weekend in Phoenix too, by the way. Those will be the teams that will be running up front most of the day. And I think that, as Kevin Harvick said last week, he thought he had to win the race to get it done. I think that'd probably be what you'd be expecting on Sunday.
Jim Utter and Bob and Jenna.
Jim Utter, Charlotte Observer, kind of along the Kevin Harvick line. One of the more unique parts of this format this year was if you want to race in a first 3 segments, you could automatically advance to the next one and be safe. Twice we saw a driver who was pretty much in a situation where they either had to win or they weren't going to advance do so. Were you surprised to see that? Do you think that was illustrative of kind of the level of competition kind of increasing during the chase?
It's exactly what we wanted to see. We want to see drivers elevate their game, teams take different kind of chances, and that brings out the best racing. And whenever we're able to achieve that, either with the format or the rules packages, and it all, at the end of the day, gets down to having, more on the line. And when we've ever witnessed it, and despite the idea that in auto racing there's 43 teams on the same track at the same time, and that's where consistency should matter, and it does. The reality is when we give the elite teams and drivers an opportunity to do something special with more on the line, more times than not they do it, and that tells you the competition is the big benefactor of whatever we're trying to do here with the format.
Bob.
Bob Hocker, Sporting News. Last year you had a driver face a domestic violence charge, and he pled guilty as part of a deferred prosecution agreement. He did not face any NASCAR sanctions when he was charged nor after his plea. Should we assume that will be NASCAR's policy going forward? And is there any consideration to having a specific domestic violence policy in the rule book instead of having it covered in the general behavioral clause?
Well, listen, what's not lost on us by any stretch is the rightful heightened awareness on domestic abuse and violence. And so you can expect our policies to reflect the understandable awareness that that's not going to be tolerated, and the past of how any league might have handled some of this is one thing. It's pretty clear when you see what's happening around the country and some of the other leagues that our policy will reflect the significance and importance that it should.
Jenna and Nate, and then we'll go over to Dean.
Jenna Fryer, Associated Press. Brian, Brad Keselowski's made things very exciting this season, particularly in Chase, and some of the things that fans and people have applauded has rubbed his peers the wrong way. I'm wondering what your take is on Brad and his place in this series.
I think he's doing exactly what he should be doing. I've told him that. Everybody's got a right to have their own style of driving out there. It's if you go back to any of the great ones, Cale Yarborough, Darrell Waltrip, Rusty Wallace, any of them. They faced a similar kind of discussion from time to time as they started to have success on the track, as some of those drivers believed a little bit more contact was necessary sometimes. And they were young and they were getting some words about that. But if you go through NASCAR's history, that's what we're about. I say it all the time. Late in a race, we expect, there are limits and lines, but we expect tight racing that sometimes will have some contact. It's in our DNA, and so I think he's doing a great job of being aggressive.
Nate, Dean, and we'll go over to Jeff and Claire.
Nate Ryan, USA Today Sports. Brian, looking at the winless championship possibility, the modeling has shown that in the last 5 years that there were 2 instances in which a driver without a win would have also won the championship. So with Newman making the championship round this year without a win, does that show that maybe it's more likely that a winless driver would have a shot at winning a championship under this system? And if so, is that a flaw, and is that something you might want to address?
It's all about the balance, Nate. It's all about what we're not going to be able to have a system. We don't want a system that ignores consistency. There's 43 teams who all compete every weekend on the same track. It's not a basketball tournament or something else. Obviously, it's auto racing. So we need to reflect the idea, the consistency. The question is, do we have the right balance? And I would say unmistakably we do. I think that the wanting to win events has taken on an undeniable importance. At the same time, there ought to be room for teams that do it every week and can be consistent. And by the way, if you get through those 3 rounds, and I don't care how you do it, frankly, but if you get through into the finale on Sunday and then you beat those 3 teams, that are the other 3 teams, that will be an achievement for anybody. I don't care how they sort of go in and out of the championship weekend. So we'll be delighted if Ryan Newman and Richard Childress are able to pull it off. I think he's the underdog at this point, but they kind of like that, so we'll see how it plays.
Jeff and then Claire, and we'll go back to Drew.
Dean.
Oh, Dean, sorry.
Yeah, Dean McNulty, Toronto Sun. If I may go international for a minute here. The NASCAR Nationwide Series had tremendous success in Montreal and continued success in the Camping World Trucking Series in Toronto. I know the 15 schedule is set, but in 2016, is the Canadian Tire Motorsports Park on the radar possibly for a nationwide series race?
Well, Canada, and you've heard me say this, is very clear, not only because it's contiguous with the United States, but more importantly, that's where we have a lot of fan base. We have a nice fan base there. It's roughly percentage-wise the size of what follows us here in the U.S. And so we're going to always be looking to see how we can take events, not just on television, but to and from at various places, because that's a fan base that we know is there. And south of the border, different discussion. That's obviously where we've also had a lot of success, and we also have an important Hispanic fan base that we're trying to elevate, get excited about NASCAR. So, our moves in and out of markets in North America, will not change. It's still very important to us.
Good. Now, Jeff.
Jeff Gluck from USA Today. The TV ratings early in the chase were down, and then they spiked up the last couple weeks here. Do you need Homestead's TV rating to increase over last year to show that the format's been a success? And what do you think of the way that they were kind of going down and then came back up?
Well, we look at interest level, and invariably, at some point, TV ratings and other ways that we would measure the digital presence that we have, ticket sales, the amount of social media that comes in and out of these big weekends. But it's true that what I said earlier, that it will still take a fair amount of time, in my view, to fully have this format and the important moments like Talladega being an example, although those ratings came, they weren't quite as off as originally reported, but almost flat. But, we might have expected the ratings to even be higher. And there's lots of reasons and so on, but one of them is that when it comes to, what is a transfer rate, who does it affect, and all that, it's just going to take some time for this format, especially with the casual fans who were second nature to go, oh yeah, that's a transfer race. Oh, these guys are in good shape. They're not, these drivers aren't, and so on. That's going to take time.
Claire?
Claire B. Lang, Sirius XM NASCAR Radio. You said you liked the aggressive racing and that you told Brad Keselowski that, you liked the way he was racing. Can you imagine a scenario where something would be over the line on Sunday and NASCAR would have to get involved in a decision? Because fans are asking a lot about that. What would be over the line of the four drivers, getting to the finish line together and doing something that NASCAR would have to make a ruling that would determine the chase?
Well, there is a line, and hard, tight racing is what we expect, and what I'm sure we'll see. And if it gets over the line, or that's what we do. We look at those things from the control tower. We will make those decisions. We have in the past. We've made them. Sometimes they happen even under caution, as you know, where people are mad or whatever they're going to do, and they go over the line. And so there's a line out there in auto racing that we will deal with. Our preference is to hope the drivers, who seldom, in our view, go over that line, don't put us in that position. But we will. I don't anticipate that, and I anticipate now. I do anticipate some really hard, tight racing, and we expect that. And that's I kind of listen, and it's fun for me to listen on satellite radio and other shows and so on. And you go to the tape of any of the past events, the big events. Petty, Pearson, mixing it up as they were coming for the start-finish line, or Bristol, any of them. They're all filled with tight, hard racing. Sometimes drivers thinking that one or the other went too far. That's NASCAR. That's what we do. That's the whole point of what we try to get up every morning and create, knowing there are limits to anything. And we will deal with it should we have to.
Let's go to Drew, and we'll come to Dustin, back here in the blue. Drew going right here, Edward.
Hey, Brian. A member of Congress has recently gone public just sort of criticizing NASCAR's handling of Kurt Busch, and I was wondering if you had a response to that, or could sort of explain why you guys are taking the position that you're taking.
Well, we are watching that case carefully, and it's under a review by law enforcement and others, and they have not made a decision on that regarding Kurt. So until they make some judgments on that investigation, it wouldn't be right of us to just intervene before they've even gotten the investigation completed. So that's our position, and we'll respect their process. It's in their hands.
Go to Dustin, back here in the blue, and then to George.
Dustin Long, MRN.com. Are you offended that the California Congresswoman is sent a letter requesting that Kurt has been suspended when the investigation is continuing? Do you feel like this is a media play?
No, I think, look, it's rightfully so, a very sensitive topic today, rightfully so. And so, not surprising that some members of Congress and other leaders might have some strong views on what we should and shouldn't do. But as I said, we'll stay the course, let the investigation be completed, and then we'll react.
Dan Gelston with the Associated Press. But do you feel like NASCAR will act, or do you want NASCAR to act like other sports are starting to do as far as taking, not waiting for that punishment, benching players? Is that something you think NASCAR might be headed toward?
Well, there's two things. One is that there's charges that are levied against in this case, a driver, and then there is a judicial hearing of some sort that would come after that. we're not even at the first stop yet, and that's going to happen when when and if charges are filed. And if charges are filed, that will change our equation, and we will look at that. And as I said earlier on, we realize the heightened awareness of this important topic, and our policies will reflect that as we go down. They'll reflect how serious it is, and you know us well enough to know when we say that, we mean it, and we'll figure it out. But we ought to have a process that gets to the bottom of the facts before anybody does anything.
George?
Yeah, Brian, George Diaz, Orlando Sentinel. When you announced the chase, you said you were looking for Game 7 moments. Over the last few weeks, have you been able to kind of reflect and say to yourself, now, there's a Game 7 moment as you watch some of the action unfold?
Yeah, I think so, and we've always thought that, and we've always wanted that, I think we continue to have those. I think Talladega, we certainly did with Brad winning at the last moment in a dramatic way to get in. Harvick having to win last Sunday, of course, the bump and run with the 31 to get in. Those are all high drama moments with great performances, and that's exactly what we'd like.
We'll go right here in the middle and then over to Matt Weaver, and then we'll have time for one more.
Jordan Bianchi, SBNation.com. Brian, have you had conversations with Kurt since the incident came to light last week?
I have not.
Has NASCAR?
We have had conversations. I personally have not, but we have had conversations.
Matt Weaver, PopularSpeed.com. With this new chase, we've seen kind of an increase in intensity both on and off the track. And on pit road, it's kind of led to some, extracurricular activities, fighting. Is that good for the sport? And what is the balance between trying to find that balance between entertainment and safety on pit road?
We don't think what happened in Texas or crew members getting into a fist fight is a good thing for NASCAR. No. We realize that emotions sometimes will get you there, and we reacted very harshly if you look at the scope of those penalties, and we should have. And anybody in our situation is always worried about escalation, and maybe one thing isn't as bad, but if things were to unfold. But the bottom line is we want the drivers to be able to, just like they've always done, be able to express themselves. We don't have dugouts or locker rooms per se. We often have drivers park pre-race and everything else very close to one another. And that's part of the fabric of NASCAR, that after a race or before, drivers will, it's not unusual for them to express themselves and have a heated conversation and between them. We're not going to change that. But now, crew members and others who join in, that's a different discussion. And like I said, we dealt with that.
Close it up with Lewis.
All right.
Yeah, in that vein, Brian, NASCAR's codified the rules of technical things. They've left behavioral activities, for the most part, uncodified. Do you see looking into, saying what's permissible on pit road after a race, what's not? I mean, Robin Pemberton said punching obviously crosses a line. But will there be any further clarification on what crosses the line on behavior?
Well, like I said, we don't want to get ourselves in a situation where no one can express themselves. No one can do what they historically have done in all of auto racing, which is to let a driver know what they think happened or didn't happen. And we expect them to do that in a way that is civil. But we also know that there are going to be some moments where the emotions will get the best out of anybody. Look, when Matt Kenseth is chasing you down like Charlotte, those are high emotions. He's a pretty mild-mannered guy, and so You know, we dealt with that. And so, you know, we had to balance this just right because, like I said, we just want our drivers to, you know, we get accused a lot, as you well know, by members of the media in particular, that we are too often restraining what drivers can say, you know, and not letting them be themselves. And we've been very careful not to, that's not what we want to do. We know they got a loud voice, they got clear opinions, and they want to share them, and that's what our fans like to hear from them. They're the star of the show, and we're going to continue to let them do that in an orderly way.
One last thing, Brian. Transition this week with ESPN and Nationwide. Comments on these partnerships?
You know, it's a bittersweet, particular with ESPN, who has been, you know, a partner off and on, mostly on, from the inception of their network. And so while we're excited about NBC coming in next year, it's bittersweet to wish them goodbye. Their final race is on Sunday. As John Skipper and then reminded, we're still partners and lots of other things together, you know, and notably in coverage of the sport, editorially wise and so on, which I'm pleased that they're making some of the choices they're making with hiring their staff and extending contracts and have really done a wonderful job of promoting this particular format, which they were very supportive of when we let them know about this. And I think they would tell you that it's going to help them with coverage down the road too, because of the storylines that are created. So that's all good and bittersweet in one respect. And the Nationwide, you know, has done everything you'd want somebody to do with helping us, but they're staying in the sport in a bigger, better way. So that's good for them, and we're excited about that. And then of course Xfinity will get us started in 2015.
Good. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Enjoy the race weekend.
Thank you guys and girls.